What up, everyone? I'm Havoc, and welcome back to Havoc's Horror Show, where we talk about all things spooky, scary, or just plain dark and edgy, just the way I like it. So previously, we reviewed the critically acclaimed Castlevania on Netflix. Now it's time for its sequel/spin-off, Nocturne. So let's jump into it, shall we? Castlevania Nocturne is set 300 years after the end of the original series, taking place during the French Revolution. So naturally, many of the characters from the original are absent, because they're dead. It's during this time that we are introduced to Richter Belmont, the descendant of Trevor and Sypha from the original series. Richter was sent to Europe following the death of his mother, Julia Belmont, by the hands of the Aztec vampire Ulrox, who I must say is probably the most unique and complicated character of the series. But anyway, being a Castlevania series, you would think Dracula is the main villain, right? Well, not so in this case. Instead, we are introduced to another vampire countess, Erzsébet Báthory, and her right-hand gal, Drolta, who seek to crush the revolution and subjugate human life by blotting out the sun using an eclipse, and have Erzsébet become a vampiric messiah. Let's just say there's a lot of mumbo-jumbo in this that's interesting, to say it the least. So to combat Erzsébet and her vampires and night creatures, Richter has help from his adoptive family, Maria and Tara, who are both speaker magicians like Sypha, as well as Annette and Edouard, former slaves from the Caribbean, who have some voodoo magic of their own to combat the vampires. Now, fans of the games will immediately notice this series takes plenty of liberties from the characters' original identities. Case in point, Annette, who is a vast departure from her game incarnation, save for the kind of sort of romance hinted between her and Richter. And that alone pissed some people off. Me, not so much, because I admittedly never played much of Rondo of Blood or Dracula X, so I had little knowledge of Annette, or any of these characters besides Richter. My main problem with it comes with how forced the hinting seems. But that's all I'll say for the sake of spoilers. Now, while I didn't play Rondo of Blood much, I most certainly played a lot of Symphony of the Night and Harmony of Dissonance, which brings me to two more characters in this series, one of whom I was really happy to see was a much older Juste Belmont, Richter's grandfather, who I feel was slightly underutilized, but when he is there, it's great. He kind of takes the Yoda kind of role, the wise old man, retired hermit, who used to be, from the great Jedi/Belmont order. You see what I'm getting at. The other one is everyone's favorite Dhampir, Alucard. Slight spoiler, he shows up for a grand total of 10 seconds at the very end of this season.
I am Alucard, son of Dracula. And if you fight me, you will die, like thousands of vampires before you.
No, so much no.
Well, at least we know he'll have a bigger role in the next season. But going back to the villains, I had no idea Erzsébet was a Castlevania villain. I know her real-life inspiration, Elizabeth Báthory, famous for bathing in the blood of virgins. Yikes. But I had no idea she was the main villain in Castlevania Bloodlines, a game on the Sega Genesis I never played. And while that game was apparently successful, we never see Erzsébet again in the games. And even in this series, while her presence is definitely felt throughout the season, when she does finally show up, she seems meh. They were trying to play her up as this new Dracula, but when compared to him, there is no contest. She is a pale imitation at best, in terms of writing, anyway. She seems very one-dimensional, not near as compelling as the tragic villain we saw previously. Hell, even Drolta seemed more interesting, and she's basically just Erzsébet's lapdog. Now, villains aside, the other characters do have some better thought out and written backstories. Richter is so struck with guilt from losing his mother that he can't use his speaker magic anymore. Annette and Edouard have their past as slaves turned vampire hunters. Maria and Tara have a complicated relationship with the abbot, who is working for Erzsébet to create night creatures as a necessary evil to crush the revolution that goes against the church, which I feel is an interesting duality, having someone in that faith using demonic creatures to propagate that faith. Typical religious zealots. Hypocritical to the end. And then, of course, you have Ulrox, who works out of self-interest but is against Erzsébet upsetting the natural balance of things using her godlike powers. Ulrox goes so far as to help Richter despite having killed his mother. But besides those subplots, the series doesn't really execute them gracefully. Here's hoping that's only a byproduct of the 8-episode season, going the same route as the original and testing waters for the next season. But with all that being said, what did I think of Castlevania Nocturne? I liked it, but not near as much as the beast that was the original series. I find even the first season of the original was better written than this whole season, and it had half the episodes. And that is why I'm giving Castlevania Nocturne a lukewarm gallant rating of 6 out of 10.
We're looking for someone called Belmont.
That would be the ungrateful wanker.
Like I said, the original seemed better executed, at least in the first season, but we'll see how the next season turns out. Knowing we'll have more Alucard is immediately a plus. But what I would like to see is a potential return and correction to the balance of power, with Dracula possibly returning and showing Erzsébet how a real vampire does battle. Anyway folks, that about wraps it up for this one. But in the meantime, I'm Gallant Havoc. Wreak some havoc, and I'll see you in the next one.